Thank you, Mr. President, for that heartfelt welcome here on the Senate floor. And I know you're excited. I know the pages are excited. Heck, half of America's excited because once again, it's Thursday afternoon and I'm back on the floor giving probably my favorite speech of the week, the Alaskan of the Week. As many of you know, it's an opportunity where I love to come down on the Senate floor and brag about somebody in my state who makes it such a great state. Usually somebody's doing something good for their local community, maybe the state, maybe the country, maybe the world. Boy, we've had so many famous Alaskans of the week. But this one, my colleagues, is really special. It's about real special heroism that we see in Alaska a lot, but it's about a young man named Andrew Chapoton, and I'm going to talk a lot about Andrew. He's an Army soldier up in Alaska and how his bravery and heroism saved some lives in a way that is just remarkable. But I always like to begin the speech talking a little bit about what's going on in Alaska. I try to get home with my wife, Julie. Hi, Julie. She's up in the gallery. Am I allowed to do that? I'm doing it anyways. Pretty much every weekend we've been home. Last couple weekends I was on an epic Kodiak hunting trip, once in a lifetime opportunity to partake in one of our state's most cherished traditions. It was an experience I won't forget. Never forget. Kristen Wilson, if you're watching, I know you love bears. I love bears too. She's a big fan of the Alaskan of the Week. But I also like to talk about what's going on in the weather. Still pretty cold in a lot of places, but the sun is higher in the sky, actually getting real high. Days are getting longer and longer. Today in Anchorage, the sun rose at 5:30 a.m. and will set tonight around 10:30 p.m., gaining more than 5 minutes since yesterday. So sunlight is really increasing rapidly. Birds are migrating by the tens of thousands. The excitement of spring is in the air. Winter is finally retreating. We love winter in Alaska, but boy, we had a long, cold winter in most places. So if you're watching, by the way, in the gallery, on TV, come up to Alaska. It will be the trip of a lifetime. Guarantee you it will be the trip of a lifetime. So now let's get to our Alaskan of the Week, Sergeant First Class Andrew Chapoton. In the heroic actions he took last May, about a year ago, that earned him the United States Army Soldier's Medal. That is the highest honor a soldier can receive for an act of heroism in a non-combat situation. So Andrew was born and raised in the township of Clinton, Michigan, but he knew that he was always going to join the military. Being in the military, from his perspective, his family's perspective, was a good, honorable thing to do, which of course he's right. His father fought in Vietnam, his grandfather fought in World War II, both of his sisters are in the Army. So he enlisted when he got out of high school and did a number of deployments, 3 tours to Iraq, a deployment to Haiti, and then was stationed in Alaska from 2015 to 2018 as part of the 4th Brigade of the 25th Infantry Division, what we call in Alaska the 425. I'm a Marine, but the 425 sure is one of my favorite units in the entire U.S. military. That's the story for another day, Mr. President. Love the 425. Andrew and his wife loved Alaska, the hiking, camping. He said, quote, everything available right outside my front door. So they were determined to come back to Alaska. They bought a house in beautiful Eagle River outside of Anchorage. And they did come back. In 2021, he came back to Alaska, where we now have the storied U.S. 11th Airborne Division, A lot of people don't know that. We stood up an airborne division in Alaska just last year. So now we have the 82nd Airborne Division on the East Coast and the 11th Airborne Division in Alaska. Andrew and his wife now with 2 children and another one on the way. Love Alaska. So what did Andrew do to win the Army Soldier's Medal? Here's how the Army described it in the summary of that medal. Sergeant First Class Andrew Chapoton voluntarily risked his own life in the heroic pursuit of saving others at a deadly car wreck near Seward, Alaska. His extraordinary act of valor exemplified the highest standard of selfless service and character as he repeatedly put himself in mortal danger to save others trapped in a horrific car wreck. Sergeant First Class Chapoton dived into 2 burning vehicles again and again to save 3 trapped occupants without any regard for his own life or his own safety. So, Mr. President, that's the summary. Here's the longer version of why this great American, great Alaskan, is today's Alaskan of the week. Last May, Andrew and his wife had an out-of-town visitor who wanted to go whale watching. Okay, that's something we do in Alaska. It's amazing. It's a great thing to do in our state. And so, one of the great places to watch whale watching is out of Seward, a few hours south of Anchorage. He almost didn't go. He had done that tour often, but in his words, he caved and said, let's go do it. So they all went. Their friend, spouse, 2 kids, got in a car, headed to Seward, had a great time. By the way, it's another great thing to do in Alaska, whale watching. They saw a lot of whales, and they were celebrating the trip. On the way back, something tragic, horrible happened. On the Seward Highway, 2 cars collided, a Jeep and a Dodge Dakota, almost right in front of his car. He had to swerve to miss them. It was a nasty, horrible crash. Debris went flying. Smoke was billowing from both cars. Gasoline was dripping out of these cars. But Andrew didn't continue to drive. He pulled over on the shoulder, jumped out of his car, and without thinking, in his words, quote, a cliche, I know it sounds corny, but 18 years of training kicked in, and I ran toward the scene of the accident. That's what Andrew said. And as a result, Mr. President, he saved the lives, literally, of 3 people. Now, he doesn't even have a memory of how he got from his car to the accident, training, bravery, heroism, but he does remember approaching the first car, the Dakota, flagging people down, yelling for a medic. There were 3 people in the Dakota. None of them were moving, and the car was bursting into flames. He pried the smashed driver's door open. He had to move the camping equipment that had fallen on the driver and was able to get her safely out of the car. At this point, the car was engulfed in flames, but he went back in and got another person out of the car into safety, which was so difficult because the car door had been smashed and crushed. Unfortunately, and we know this is hard for Andrew, I hope he's watching, by the way, and his family, he went back again but could not save the 3rd person. The door was also crushed, and he couldn't open it. He couldn't find a pulse, and he says this haunts him to this day. But again, Andrew's instincts and training kicked in, and he transitioned to getting the driver out of the other burning car, the burning Jeep. After he got that passenger out, he performed combat lifesaver triage and life-saving medical care for these 3 very seriously wounded Americans. Mr. President, the story of heroism doesn't end there. Both cars by now had turned into raging infernos. Flaming liquid was flowing down the road toward one of the injured passengers. With the help of another Good Samaritan, Andrew moved one of the gravely injured passengers away from the impending explosion of this car. Then he shielded her body when the car did explode, debris and shrapnel flying everywhere. Even after the fire department arrived, Andrew continued to take the lead in performing life-saving medical treatment. Eventually, a life flight helicopter arrived to take the seriously injured individuals to the hospital. Andrew stayed, gave his statement to the troopers, handed his keys to his wife, got back in his car, and drove back home several miles, a couple hours to Anchorage. It was a quiet ride, he said, quote, "I used up every single ounce of adrenaline that was in my 38-year-old body." His children saw much of what happened, and they are proud of their father. And Andrew is proud and so deserving to receive the Army Soldier's Medal. But he did say, Mr. President, he would trade that in 1,000 times over if only all the passengers had survived. Mr. President, these are the kind of people who live in Alaska. Brave, selfless, heroic. And these are the kind of military, by the way, America, who make up our military. Not every American citizen would have done what Andrew just did. As a matter of fact, I would say most people probably wouldn't. People who risk their lives, their own lives, whether it's protecting Americans at home or people abroad so that others could live. That's what our military members do. Mr. President, this is how the Army summed up this heroic action. Sergeant First Class Chapoton's ability to perform these heroic acts under extreme pressure while simultaneously taking control of the scene of this horrific crash is a testament to his U.S. Army values. Fundamentally understanding the extreme personal risk to his own life, Sergeant First Class Chapoton selflessly endangered himself again and again to save American lives. He risked his own safety to help avert a catastrophic outcome. Without his selfless courage in the face of grave danger, more lives would have been lost. So thank you, Andrew, for your bravery, your heroism, your example, not just to your friends and family or to Alaskans, but to all Americans and all veterans. Thank you for protecting our nation. Thank you for volunteering to serve. Thank you for making your home in Alaska. Thank you for your heroic actions on that day. We want to congratulate you for being awarded the United States Army Soldier's Medal, one of the highest honors a soldier can achieve, and certainly, Andrew, one of the highest honors you can achieve in the U.S. Senate, being our Alaskan of the Week. Great job. I yield the floor.